So let's hear it. What's underrated in your opinion?
Well, it's probably going to be obvious. I think that making yourself known to the admissions.
All right, looking forward to this one. Welcome to GradTalk MBA by Magoosh. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today. I have to apologize in advance. I'm working on very limited sleep. I had my flight canceled yesterday and got up at 4 o'clock this morning to get on a flight. But I can't think of a better podcast to kind of wake me up, get me energized than my good friends over at Simon. So very excited to bring this podcast to you all today. Just a gentle reminder or an introduction for those of you who don't know me. My name's Eric Allen. I'm the general manager here at Magoosh. And Magoosh is an ed tech company that aims to level the playing field by providing high quality, affordable test prep and admission support. So with that, we're going to jump into this podcast, which is all about bringing you inside information from admissions officers that we know to demystify the MBA application process. And with that, super excited to have not just one, but two guests here from Simon. And with that, would you all just give introduction of yourself, your title, your school, the role that you play there, maybe like how you got into the industry, like what keeps you there, and then at least one fun fact about each of you, and then we'll jump right into questions.
I am Sharise Kent, Assistant Director of Recruitment here at Simon Business School. I started in admissions about, I'll just say over 20 years ago, even though I look 20, right? So I started in this industry on the undergraduate side, and it kind of grew from there. I've worked for a number of institutions, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, kind of lived in a few different places. And eventually I spent some time at a nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing the representation of underrepresented students in the media industry as a program manager there, still working and recruiting college students to make those placements and connections. And then I found my way into graduate admissions, came back to Rochester, came back to, this wonderful place that I call home, and saw the opportunity to return to admissions, but on the graduate level, specifically with the MBA. And, I've been doing it for a long time. I've had the chance to work with undergraduate students, graduate students, PhD level students, and it's something that I enjoy, and I've spent my career in higher ed, and I'll probably stay in this space because I enjoy being a small part of the process of a very big decision for 17-year-olds to 27-year-olds to 47-year-olds. So that's me. Fun fact, I play the trumpet.
I still have never heard her play the trumpet, Eric.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I guess technically I could play the trumpet, but like, do you play the trumpet or do you play the trumpet? We'll have to find that later on a podcast. We'll have to have you come in and play for us.
Special skills of admissions reps, yeah. Hidden talents. Well, hello everyone. Andrew Brayda, Director of Admissions at Simon. Thrilled to be with you and to partner with Eric and Access Magoosh here. Been at Simon now, been in higher ed almost 20 years, like Sharise in the industry for quite a while. I worked in undergraduate admissions prior to graduate admissions and enrollment management, and really it was the students that got me in, right? I kind of caught that bug, right? Working with students, like Sharise said, and sort of seeing students be successful and helping them, being a small part of that journey during their time in undergrad and obviously now grad and in the MBA program. And really, I think the other thing I would say is probably being able to demystify the processing, being a part of conversations like this, where we can help students realize that you can achieve your goals, right? These are things that are attainable. And just being a small part of that process, I think, has always been the most rewarding piece for me. I've got 3 kids, so fun. I'm always playing with Legos or Nintendo or something. So that's my fun fact, I guess. Oh, there's always something going on that's kid related, from sports to fun kid activities. So that's me.
That tends to happen with kids. And Sharise, I know you mentioned you spent some time in Maryland. So like without putting words in your mouth. It sounded like you thought that the great state of Maryland was your favorite stop among all of the stops. Was that? And you're a Ravens fan, not a Bills. Let's not put words in your mouth. Let's just leave it right there. I don't know if you have any comment on that, or
You're muted, but I would
she's
say
muted. And so what I think she said was definitely Ravens fan.
I was gonna say once a Bills fan, always a Bills fan, Eric.
Okay.
I don't know if
Oh my
that's
God. I will say that I like to say that New York raised me, Maryland made me. That's how I surmise my life.
Okay, let's just move on. That's a friendly competition there between Maryland and New York. For those of you who were outside of the U.S. or aren't familiar with the Northeast, Maryland and New York are a couple states away, and they're competitive football, U.S. football teams who compete quite a bit. So that's a little banter there around that. Let's pivot now to the school. So obviously, we're here to talk about what makes Simon unique. I've been fortunate enough to visit campus, to spend time there with the students. What would you say is the big differentiator at Simon? A lot of these candidates will go to different programs and they hear about all the things and they start sounding the same after a while. So what would you say, when you really think about Simon, what are the true differentiators there?
I'll take that one since I'm unmuted. There's a few, one of which being that we are one of the most diverse MBAs in the top 50. I think that's something that we're very proud of, to have a population of students that really represents the globe. We consider ourselves to be, a place where people come who want to be global leaders. And the fact that our institution and our business school reflects the world that we live in geographically, ethnically, the gender parity, I think that's something that we're very proud of. And to be able to say that we're one of the most diverse is obviously a testament to the work that we've done. I think also the size of our program, we're a smaller program, about 100 students strong, so that really equips our students to understand working in teams, working together, and being able to be in an environment in which they have that attention and they have that ability to be able to really work with each other and get to know each other, and really support each other through a very arduous 2-year process. And I would say a third thing, being the first to get STEM. So everybody or many schools now have STEM as an option, but we were the first to do it. And that's reflective of the fact that we teach everything from a kind of economics-based standpoint. And really, it's been a hallmark of what we do. So it's not new to us. And I think that really establishes the fact that we didn't have to change as much. It's been really rooted into who we are.
And Sharise, to kind of build on that, like one of the first things that I see or saw when I went on campus the first time was this big banner about how you're like the number one diversity program or the number one program, most diverse school, I guess, is the characterization. How did you build that? Like, is that part of your culture from a recruiting standpoint? Because when I think about diversity, I think like, New York City, not New York State. And so like, was so surprised when I saw that. Can you talk to the audience about how you built that culture, how you maintain that culture, and what diversity means to you at Simon?
Yeah, it's a great question. As it relates to diversity and it being a part of the culture here at Simon, I do think it's something that we've committed to, working with partners, even in the late 60s, being able to begin these partnerships with organizations like Access and others that are dedicated to doing the work of working with underrepresented persons and demystifying this MBA journey. And so I think if you look at the history of Simon Business School, you see those partnerships, you see that they've been there for years. And so much of our recruiting, going into places and spaces to identify traditionally underrepresented candidates has helped us to build up this culture and build up the most diverse MBA program of the top 50. Additionally, we have a strong international population representing anywhere from 28 to 30 different countries per class. And so when you have a class of 100 students and 35% are African American, Latino, or Native American, and you have over 40% of your students are coming from multiple countries, I think the diversity is evident, and it allows students who come here to visit and those who eventually enroll to really feel as though they are surrounded in a space that is one that allows them to be themselves, one where they can find themselves in others. And I think it's important when students visit our campus, they can see themselves because of the reflection of the diversity. And in terms of how we maintain that, I think it's just just a commitment from the top down that we will continue to do that in the face of any challenges. It's a cornerstone of what we built and a cornerstone of who we are and who we represent. And we continue to diversify our faculty and our staff. We continue to diversify our case studies. We continue to have organizations and clubs with impact on the Simon community and the Rochester community overall. So I think it's just, for me, having worked at, honestly, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 institutions, something like that. The commitment to diversity is evident when you walk on this campus and you walk into the Simon Business School.
That's great. And I love the fact that, you talked about how it's not just about recruiting, but it's also about in the things that you do, on campus, and how you talked about case studies, things like that. So it's not just about diversity of the people you bring in, but it's the faculty, the staff, and also learning. I would love to know, when you talk about some of the values of Simon, even outside of diversity, how do you approach the admissions process to make sure you're finding candidates that are aligned with the values at the university? Obviously, a really challenging job for both of you. So I'd love to know how you think about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think this is something that we talk a lot about. And I think that's part of the process is we continue to try and iterate and think about new ways to engage students and really know who they are authentically coming through during the application process, the prospect stage, et cetera. Sharise is always willing to have calls with students and get to know students very early on in the process. We have a team that's devoted to the early recruiting process and providing feedback on profile and those sorts of things. But I think it starts very early and it continues on throughout the sort of life cycle of the annual cycle of admissions. And we really have to be talking about it. We're constantly obviously spend a lot of time reviewing each candidate very holistically. Obviously, they submit their application, and so that's a core component of how we evaluate candidates. But a lot comes down to the interview and their interactions with the community and visiting campus, and some of those other components as well that help us get to know candidates, like I said, more authentically during the admissions process. I don't know if there's anything else you'd add, Sharise, there, but
Okay, that's really helpful. And then when you think about under-resourced candidates in multiple ways, they can be under-resourced or underrepresented. What are kind of some of the things you do to really promote those types of candidates through the application process, but also once you get on campus? Because a lot of the Magoosh clients that we have, the Access members, do come from under-resourced backgrounds or do come from underrepresented backgrounds. So we'd love to know, the audience would love to know kind of how you support them in both the admissions process and also kind of once they get on campus.
I think through the admissions process, we do a lot to kind of pull back the veil to the extent that we can. We're very open and honest in our communication about the holistic process that Andrew referenced. From the beginning to before you even put in an application, you can have a conversation with a member of our team or with me myself, and I can walk you through the application and just honestly answer questions and give you some feedback into the things that you can do to put forth your best application. And I think on the other side, when you look at under-resourced candidates, scholarship is a very important piece to be able to provide candidates with the best opportunities for scholarships. Over 90% of our students in our full-time MBA receive a merit-based award. And I think it's important that they are merit-based so that it allows candidates to know that, if they've worked hard and they've done the things necessary to become a quality candidate, that they're going to be rewarded for that. And so I think being able to say that over 90% of our students are receiving merit-based awards is helpful for them to be able to afford an opportunity to attend an MBA that's a highly ranked program.
And I think I would add just a couple quick things, Eric. Application fee waivers. I think we try and eliminate a lot of the barriers, right, for students to not only just learn more about Simon, but also obviously help them in their MBA search process and sort of just the educational piece around around the MBA process. So there's a lot of resources that we devote to that. We also a lot of travel stipends to get students to campus. We think it's an important opportunity, not only again, for our sake, to get students here to kind of experience our culture and our community, but also to have them students experience what, an MBA, like the day in the life of an MBA student is like, right? And a mock class and panels and those sorts of things. We have, our diversity conference coming up in the fall and our women's conference, some of these big sort of cornerstone events that we run every year. And so those are great opportunities to spend time on campus. And we want students to reduce some of those barriers to get students here and learn more about the program. And I guess the only other thing I would say is there's been a shift, right? A lot of schools are moving to this test optional or waiver process for GMAT, GRE. So we did move to a test optional process just I guess now 2 years ago, Sharise. I think that's reduced a lot of the barriers, right, to help students engage early in the process and learn not just about Simon, but learn more about how an MBA can be a good ROI opportunity for them in their career.
And I was going to ask you this later, but since you brought it up, why don't you talk a little bit about your kind of test optional process? What are you looking to get out of that? And like, who's a good candidate for test optionality at Simon?
It's a great question. So we made that decision during COVID, during the pandemic, to move to a waiver process because a lot of the challenges that students were facing. But there had been a trend where students were questioning whether this was indicative of their ability to perform well in an MBA program, and I think that's something that we always tried to take into consideration during the review process at Simon, as Sharise mentioned, right? We take a holistic review. We're very personalized, so we know that a test score will only tell you so much, and you're only going to learn so much about a student based on a score, and that it may not be a measure of success in let's say the core MBA curriculum, right? So we made the decision to move to test optional, and I think it's worked out very well. I think what we tend to put weight on other areas of the application a little bit more heavily, undergraduate GPA, and we can talk about some of that as well if it's helpful. But prep. MBA prep classes that maybe students can take. We offer a prep math class that students can take, right? There's certain things like that students can boost their profile even more. But we also know that, not everyone's going to come into the MBA with a business background or an engineering background or math background, right? Stats background. And so we believe we can teach you a lot of that, the analytics, the economics, the quantitative approach during the MBA program. So Sharise, maybe you could talk about profiles and what might be good, what kind of profiles would be good for students to kind of go that test optional route.
Yep. So generally what we recommend is for students to take a look at our profile, which is on our website for full-time MBA students. And typically if a student is choosing to take the GRE or the GMAT and they are within that profile, then that's something that they can submit to supply another data point and support their application. We understand that some students are not able to, or they don't test well, and so they may choose to go the optional route. But for students who want to work in specific industries, specifically high-end consulting at the more competitive consulting firms, or going into investment banking, it is sometimes better for the student to pursue a GMAT for the purposes of placement if they're looking to work in the highly competitive industries of investment banking and certain consulting firms. Outside of that, we're looking at core courses, so you don't have to be a business major and engineering major, but we want to see courses like statistics, maybe calc, economics courses, finance courses, things that give us a sense of a quantitative comfort level, right? So for candidates who don't exhibit those courses, they may consider taking the GRE, GMAT. We do accept the executive assessment as well. So if you don't have a strong background in those things, I think sometimes the test can give you a barometer of just where you need to prepare for a student, not just getting into an MBA program, but the places and the gaps that you may want to close before you start an MBA program. For students who don't pursue that route, then they can take our math for management course that we offer. You have other prep courses that can prepare you for the math component and the STEM components of moving into an MBA program. So definitely check out our profile. If you're going to take the test, take a look to see if you fit. And if you are lacking in quantitative backgrounds or courses, then consider taking the test. But again, it's not the be all end all with us. We're looking for candidates who are well-rounded and can present in many other ways. So for students, again, who may be right out of undergrad, maybe they're only a year out, taking the test might allow you to have another data point because you're competing against individuals who may have 5 or 6 years of work experience. And so you want to do something to boost your application against them. So those are some of the people who would say, hey, is this something that you want to do if possible?
Well, thank you. And one of the things that you said, Sharise, there, I want to point out to the audience, which I think is far underreported. There's this concept of holistic review, but there's also, as part of the holistic review, Simon's holistically trying to make sure that you're going to be successful in your career. So if you're thinking about investment banking, they know that investment banks may actually ask for your test score. And so if you come in and you try to get out of a test score, you're effectively putting yourself at a disadvantage, as an example, versus peers who also want to get investment banking who have had a test. So even though it may not be ideal for you and you don't want to study, they're trying to help you be successful in this process. And I think oftentimes people are like, why are they making me do it? I don't want to do it, whatever. And that's fine. But then you also then don't want to necessarily achieve this career goal if that's what's required by them. So I appreciate you pointing that out, that it's not just about the school's requirements. It's also about what your career goals are. And if you're general corporate and they don't require GRE, GMAT, and you have the requisite background, then, that probably works. But if you're going into a space where they do require it, I think you really need to think about that. And so it almost sounds like maybe having some of these conversations, looking at the profile, that you'll get a better sense for whether or not a candidate is a good test optional candidate by taking that time early on, which sounds like a really great opportunity and one that the audience should certainly take advantage of. So thank you for that answer. Anything to add?
I would just add that it can also, to some extent, impact scholarship, as Sharise mentioned. It's another data point, right? It can certainly add value from that lens as well. And if you're in the range of scores and you're adding a score that can be competitive, it can be a data point in the scholarship decision. It's not, you wouldn't be, you would certainly still be eligible if you didn't submit a score for scholarship, but it can add another point to your candidacy. Yeah.
Yes, another reason to not hate the GMAT GRE necessarily. All right, so we're going to zoom out a little bit and talk about the application process. So you all have been in this game 15, 20 years, started when you were 5. So like when you think about how much time needs to be spent on the application process, how do you help candidates think, if it was, Andrew, you mentioned you have a couple kids, your kid comes to you and says, hey, Dad, I'm ready to go to business school. And you're like, okay, here's how long you need to prepare yourself. And these are the things that you really want to hit to get yourself ready for the MBA application process.
It's a good question. I do think that's somewhat situational. I mean, if a student has a year, that's great, right? Spend time leaning into some test prep opportunities, leaning into some early engagement opportunities, visiting campuses, right? I've seen students do it in 2 weeks. It's not ideal, So I think it does depend somewhat on the situation and the candidate. But the more time that you can commit, if someone's studying for the GMAT or GRE, right? I think you want to give yourself a couple months to really prep for that at least. But ultimately, keep in mind the deadlines. We want students to apply when they feel like they have the best application possible. And if that's round 1 and you've done all this prep leading up to round 1 and you're submitting a score, you're ready to go, then don't wait. If you want to give yourself some more time and aim for round 2 or round 3, that's okay as well. And again, that does depend somewhat on the school, and so each school can give you their sense of kind of what that timeline looks like. But for us, we want you to apply with the best application possible. So if that means delaying a little bit longer and having some of these conversations early and really prepping in a number of different ways, then thinking about your story, thinking about your journey, why the MBA makes sense, all those kinds of questions that we want students to be asking themselves, that can help you be more prepared for the application process and the onboarding process for the MBA.
And I'll jump in and add also when we talk about that timeline and that time frame, as Andrew mentioned, you want to be aware of the deadlines, but you also want to be aware of opportunities to visit campuses, right? So if you are giving yourself that runway where, okay, I'm applying for 2024, it's 2023, you have plenty of time to take a look at the schools and potentially pick out the ones that you want to visit, the ones that you may not be as familiar with, the ones, we have our diversity conference, our women's conference, our experience time and weekends. So students have the opportunity to potentially visit some of these campuses and get a feel. So when possible, adding that into your calendar so you know what days to take off of work, how many hours you have available to do that part of it as well. I think in addition to the time to study for your test, the time to get your essays together and those things.
All right, that's really helpful. So I'm going to ask a question. I just thought of it. I guess lack of sleep provides creativity. I have a new segment in the podcast. I've done a couple of these, so this is the first time I'm doing it. And it's called Overrated and Underrated. Overrated, underrated. So I'm going to ask you each to give your own thought on which aspect of the application process is overrated, i.e., people spend too much time or there's too much talk about it or whatever it is. And then which part of the application process is underrated? Like you see them, there's a ton of variability, and you're like, man, if y'all just did this, it would be so much easier for you to get in. And I'll say this caveat. Simon, as well as 95% of schools have a very holistic application process. So whatever they say about underrated or overrated does not mean that they value one more than the other per se. It is just a reflection of their own experience and what they see. And maybe they see areas that are underdeveloped or underfocused on that they really think can add significant value to a candidate, or there's just so much concern, angst, or discussion around a topic. Doesn't mean they're less important. It just means from their perspective, they're overrated or underrated. So with that, turn up the heated seats. You're on the hot seat. Who's going first?
I'm going to just jump in. I think recommendations are overrated. That's going to be my hot button topic here. We moved to references, collecting references, but if somebody applied with a bad recommendation, that's a pretty big red flag, right? You should be applying with people that are going to speak highly of you and your candidacy. So I think recommendations tend to be overrated. Can they be helpful and informative? Yes, they can be. But I think students spend a lot of time worrying about who the recommender is, what they're going to say, what's their title, what can I get the vice president of my company to fill out this recommendation? And those are the things that are not really going to tell us much about the character of the individual, what kind of value they're going to bring to the program. And so I'd say that's probably my overrated response.
Overrated. Your undergraduate degree, right? So you have to have one, but I'll pick on myself. I have an undergraduate degree in public relations. Okay. So I think sometimes students get overly concerned if you performed well in your undergraduate degree. So that's the first criteria, but you don't have to be a business major, econ major, a STEM major. And I think sometimes people, you don't have to have 15 programming languages in your background coming into a business school program. So I think if you've done well academically, you don't have to be overly concerned about the specific undergraduate degree that you received. You're getting an MBA because you want to learn certain skills that you may not have learned as a student. So that would be something to, all public relations majors. Come on, sure, we're good.
Well, that's great. And now, Andrew, that if you make that late night tweet, maybe had a few too many to drink, Sharise has you covered. She will handle all public relations issues from that fallout. So that's good to know. I'm almost scared to ask you, Andrew, what your next one is, because I had no idea Recommenders was coming for Overrated. So let's hear it. What's underrated in your opinion?
Well, it's probably going to be obvious. I think that making yourself known to the admissions committees, right? Admissions teams visiting. I think that sometimes is underrated. Now, I'm thinking from the student perspective, right? Prospective student perspective here. It can really make an impact. I think allowing yourself to be known and telling your story, and that has themes and threads throughout the entire application process, right? But making yourself known early and connecting with schools, if they allow that opportunity, I think that can go a long way in the admissions process. So that wasn't so controversial, I don't think.
No, it wasn't.
And kind of the same thing. I think underrated is a school visit. People like, you're about to relocate for 2 years, understanding that there may be some prohibitive opportunities as it relates to finances, right? Which is why we offer stipends to help students. For international students, obviously that can be a bit more complicated to be able to take this trip, but you're relocating your life for 2 years. Sometimes you're moving your families, significant others. And so the idea of if it's within your means and your capability to not visit a school, I think that's an underrated aspect of the process that I just, encourage people: step foot on campus, see what it looks like, see what the campus looks like, see what the city feels like. It's a very big part of where you will spend 2 years, and so it's underrated the amount of people who don't.
Yeah, I love that. Just out of curiosity, like, do you think that's a result of the size of the program, or more the culture of the program that you both kind of outlined, the importance of connection, right? Like, because I think that really speaks to what Simon's about. Like, you want to be connected with the applicants because you want to stay connected with them as students and ultimately beyond. So I'm curious. I mean, obviously, you don't have another perspective. You work where you work, but do you have a sense for, is it more the size or more the culture that drives the desire to connect with the candidate?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's as easy to separate the two, but I would say I think the culture. I think we're intentionally built a way so that students, I hope, can feel a sense of belonging in the program as well, right? And I think students, that's sometimes underrated in an MBA program, that it's really important to feel like you belong, and to have that sense of belonging. We talk about that in higher ed a lot. Like, there's a lot of research around belonging and the undergraduate experience and finding those connection points. But I think that's something that we think about a lot at Simon, and I think it's important for MBA programs. And Sharise talked about some of the engagement opportunities that students can have, and that's part of it too, right? If you feel like you belong, you're more involved in the experience and the community and the surrounding Rochester community, and your career search, and you're more engaged in those sorts of things. So we do think a lot about that as well. I don't know if that truly answers your question, but I think that sense of belonging is important, something we think about and try and facilitate and here at Simon. Yeah.
And I think just also, we are where we are. We're in upstate New York. We're in a beautiful area, Finger Lakes region. And so I think when you're looking at what might be an unfamiliar location to some candidates, the opportunity to visit and see that, it's bigger than most people think. There's a little bit more happening than most people think. That can go a long way in making people feel comfortable that their choice to be here for 2 years is a good one. We have one of the most affordable costs of living in a mid-sized metro city in the United States of America. So it's a great place to be. And so I think it's a combination of that as well. Is no matter where you're going to pursue your MBA, getting a sense of the city and getting a sense of the culture is important. And so sometimes when it's a lesser known place, I think it's great for people to come to a city that they may not otherwise have put on their target list, although there are a lot of reasons to be here, including Simon.
Yeah, when work at Facebook and live in Rochester, there's a little bit of financial arbitrage there. So that's pretty cool. I want to talk to you about the interview process, and not just maybe the interview process, but just general engagement process, whether it's connecting one-on-one with you, Sharise, early on, or Andrew early on, or having the formal interview. What kinds of suggestions do you have for candidates who are going through a formal engagement with you? Maybe things that you see or have seen that you're just like, don't do that, but like, really, we want you to do this, and then you're going to be good to go.
I think the initial conversation with me sometimes, as a recruiter, I get the chance to engage with people who are at various levels of the process. And so the conversation with me in the initial stages is relatively informal. So that's the opportunity that you have to say, hey, how about this? Or can you give me some idea, does my resume need to be reformatted? So really in that first initial conversation, for those who choose to look us up and have that, it's that opportunity to kind of relax a little bit, breathe a little bit, and just get some information about you as a student, as a profile, get some information about Simon, and also, what you can do to put forth the best application. When you move into the interview process, we consider ourselves to have an interview process that is conversational in nature. It's not with a complete committee. It's a representative from the admissions office, and you have the opportunity to really engage. Our interviews are not scripted. It's an opportunity to have a conversation. So the better you know yourself, the better you know your goals, the better you know why you're looking to go to Simon, and the better you know why you're looking to go for an MBA. All of those things will make your interview run smoother because the questions are not necessarily just tell me this, tell me that. It's about engaging with you to get a sense of if the Simon community is going to be a good fit. So I'd say understand who you are, understand where you're going, and understand how Simon fits into the picture. And that's going to go a long way into having a very smooth conversation.
This might, and I don't want to deter anyone here from going through this process. And we're supposed to be demystifying things, right? But if you treat every interaction like we're assessing you, then I think you come into the conversations, even though they're very casual and sort of organic, very early with Sharise and more formal during the interview. There's a level of preparation that you can come in with if you have that mindset or that lens sort of coming into the conversation where these people are assessing me as a candidate. Do my goals align? Does my personality align with their culture, et cetera, right? So I think that's a good lens. Again, I don't want to intimidate anyone. It's not as it's much more casual and organic in many of the conversations, but I think that helps frame maybe some of the conversation a little bit, because we are also thinking about, as Eric mentioned earlier, like the end, the career outcomes, and thinking about how you're gonna, can we put you in front of a recruiter? Can we put you in front of an alumni? Those sorts of things. Those are things we keep in mind as an admissions team, and certainly during the admissions committee review process too.
Yeah, I mean, no, I really appreciate you saying that, because when you talk about demystification, it's like we want to know the real deal. And I think what you said is real. And what Sharise said is real. Like, you can come to a conversation and have an informal, relaxed conversation, but don't show up to Sharice's call and not be prepared, right? Like, no one would allow you to do that in a business setting, and therefore you shouldn't do it in this setting, right? This is business school, right? This is not preschool. Like, we're trying to get you ready for business here. And so come with research, come with thoughts, come with ideas, but you can also be relaxed, right? So both can happen, and appreciate you all sharing both of your perspectives at different times in the process, because I do think they're both important. All right, let's
I just want to jump in.
Go ahead, Sharise.
The best conversations that I have are the ones with the students who are prepared. It's great to come and want to learn more, but it is the most beneficial to everyone involved if you come and you did some research online, and you maybe you watched a webinar and you have questions, because we're going to get more to the heart of the issue about whether or not this is a fit for you, because you already know the programs and you've seen, okay, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that, I want to talk about your international immersions, I want to talk about how do we get to STEM. So doing that research and having that preparedness, the same as you would if you were researching a company prior to applying to it, right? A lot of people, when they apply to jobs and they go for a job interview, a key component is not just showing up at the job interview, but researching the job. And some people go a step further, and before I sit in my application to apply for a job, I'm going to research it even before that point. So that's a very good point, that it can be a relaxed situation, but to get the most out of it, come with some knowledge already, so that your questions can be more pointed.
Right. And to break that down further, happy Sharise is answering good questions. Show us happy Sharise. There it is. And sad Sharise, show us sad Sharise. Yeah, that is answering questions from the website. That's not happy Sharise. That is sad Sharise. So make her happy, please. Do your research, come with good questions, and everyone can be happy. Let's talk about admissions committee. Everyone wants to know, like, what is it all about? Talk about the conversations early on from recruiting come into play. Do you have names? Does everyone look individually? Just walk us through the whole process and kind of how it all works and some of the magic that goes on during committee.
Well, first, I guess I would say we it's more of an art than a science. Now, there is some science to it, right? We have to look at your profile, and there's some analytics and data that we use, of course. But the process, again, is a little bit different at every school. Some schools have multiple reviewers. Some schools have faculty review. Some schools have staff review applications. It really depends on the program. But how it works for us is we will have multiple reviews of your application, different stages of sort of a blind or semi-anonymous reviews that provide feedback into the admissions committee. So initially that happens with your application review. Then there are application readers that dive into your application, read your essays, are passing on feedback to admissions committee. There's then a review of that feedback, and then a decision on an interview invitation. So invitations at Simon are invitation only interviews, and so you have to be invited to interview. Again, like we talked about, you can interview in person, over Zoom, whatever the case may be. And then that feedback, again, is done in a sort of a blind, semi-anonymous format, where then that feedback is independent. The interviewer will only see your resume. And then that feedback from the interview goes off to the admissions committee again for review. The committee then combines all the feedback from those independent reviews to make a final decision. So we don't want one person making the decision. It's not based on one person's assessment of your candidacy and your goal alignment and fit and all those other things. It really is a very committee-based decision. Which is, it's time consuming. It's we spend a lot of time evaluating candidates and really digging into what makes you unique and authentic, and what you'll bring to the classroom and the community here at Simon. And the decisions happen kind of on a rolling basis, at least here at Simon. You can apply by a deadline, and we roll decisions out and interview invitations out, sort of on a rolling basis. That's the committee, I guess, process at Simon a bit. Typically, admission decisions are also tied to scholarship. So if admitted, you'll find out about your scholarship right away. That's how we approach things at Simon. Some schools do things a little bit differently. You may have to submit a scholarship application, an essay, and those sorts of things separately, but we will make a decision holistically on admission and scholarship at that point of review for admission. We do have some alumni that will interview as well. Sorry, Eric, that are part of the process, but interviewers tend to be staff that are representatives of the admissions team.
And how does it work with waitlist? So a candidate comes through, you waitlist them. Because you do kind of rolling, do you have a period of time where you go back to that list like over time, or like how does it actually work?
Yeah, for us, it is rolling. So we will review the waitlist throughout the year. Again, depending on like application deadlines and application submissions and the quality of the pool and all those sorts of factors. Yeah. Again, every school is a little bit different in terms of, when they review that process. Some won't start reviewing the waitlist until later on in the cycle. But yeah, we'll review the waitlist throughout as well.
Okay, so we talked about kind of the admissions process. I'm curious, how you think about stakeholders. Like we talked a little bit about career and you wanting to kind of really understand what candidates are interested in for their career because you want to make sure that they're successful in their MBA journey. You have career services, you have other students, you have professors who I'm sure you get a few emails every now and again. You have recruiters, you have all these alums, all these stakeholders. How do you all think about a class as it relates to the stakeholders, or do you not? Do you just say, look, I'm going to put the best class we can put together, and then we'll worry about stakeholders later. We'll get that feedback. We'll iterate for the next year. I'm just curious how you kind of balance like all the different voices in the room, so to speak.
Well, I think that's inevitable that, there are going to be those various opinions and stakeholder perceptions that we'll hear about during the admissions process. I would like to say in a perfect world, we can make decisions in a bubble. And that's often how we do things with admissions committee, right? But there are going to be students who will be referred by a rising second year MBA or an alumni. And so that does play a bit of a role in terms of the application process. And I think that the opinions, you have to kind of separate that somewhat from the admissions process. I think I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier and ties in a little bit to those independent reviews that we have during the admissions process. You want to make sure that thread is there throughout, that those themes are consistent across your application and those conversations that you have. So if you're talking to alumni and they're providing a reference for us, a referral for your candidacy, that there is a consistency in terms of your story and those themes that you're applying with, because you don't want to raise questions with the admissions committee that the alumni maybe told us this piece about your story that maybe we didn't hear about or weren't aware of from your application, right? We want to make sure we get all of that in your application. And you mentioned career management center as well, right? That's something that we do take into consideration. Your career goals obviously is an important part of the review process in terms of how we can help you be successful in your career. What kind of resources do we have available? And so that does, coachability. It gets back to some of those pieces that I think are going to be important in the assessment of your candidacy that we have to consider during the admissions process. But like I said, we try and take those independent reviews so that we have an unbiased perspective on your candidacy, while also giving opportunity for alumni and some of those other voices to share feedback and referrals and those sorts of things.
Okay, great. We're gonna jump right into fact versus fiction. I'm gonna do this from Simon style. I'm gonna bring you some unique questions for this podcast, so I hope you're ready. If not, too late. We're starting. Okay, fact or fiction? Most of the graduate MBA students at Simon live on campus housing. Fact or fiction?
That is actually fiction, if I'm not mistaken. Most of our students, Rochester, the University of Rochester Simon is actually on the edge of the city. So you have a lot of affordable housing opportunities within walking distance to campus. And sometimes students find, dependent upon their needs, family and so forth, that they have more options off campus. We do offer on campus housing for graduate students. However, the majority of our MBA students do live off campus.
I would say, yeah, within about a mile of campus. That's the fact, right? The fiction, the on-campus piece, but yeah, very, very walkable, very bikeable. Shuttle lines from the university make it very easy. So, yeah.
All right, I started you off with a tricky question. That was devious. Okay, fact or fiction? If I am from California, Hawaii, very sunny area. I can't go to Simon. It's just too cold and snowy. I just won't survive. I'm a West Coast person, like fact or fiction.
Fact. Buy some boots, buy some Uggs and a coat, and you'll be all right.
Layers, man. My mom always used to say, you got to wear layers. That's all it takes. And we have students that come from all over the world, very, very warm climates that have never seen snow before in many cases, and it's doable. Yeah, you'll survive.
Remember,
We also have time.
you're in
We
business
also have
school,
time.
so you're like inside. Like, don't forget, like most of the time, actually.
Like one of the best featured points from our building, the business school, you can get to Starbucks without ever coming out from underground. We have tunnels because it's cold.
Tunnels. I love that. So that is a great find in the fact versus fiction segment. Fact or fiction, financial aid kind of dries up after round 2. Fact or fiction?
Fiction. Yeah. Um, Now, the fact side might be that there may be fewer spots available later in the process, right? But scholarship is accessible for sure throughout. And some of our top awards at Simon, we reserve for later round applicants.
Great. Fact or fiction, there is a minimum amount of work experience at Simon.
Fiction. Minimum is relative, right? So the middle 80% of our students have between 2 and 9.5, 10 years of work experience, which means there's a small percentage of students who come to Simon with less than 2 years of work experience if you just look at our profile.
Okay. And fact, go ahead. Okay. Fact or fiction, the optional essay is not really optional, regardless of whether or not I have something to say or not. I really need to kind of like say a little bit more in the optional essay.
Can I say it depends? I think it's that's a good one. I'm going to say fiction. If you have the opportunity to say more, why not say more? Don't force it though. The other thing that we offer, we offer an optional video essay as well. Take advantage of that. It's a great way to just add another dimension to your profile, to your candidacy, brings your application to life, which similarly to the optional essay, it gives us a chance to get to know you, better, right? Tell us a little bit more about yourself that we wouldn't have learned in some other way. Certainly, it's a good opportunity to highlight maybe some areas of your application that might be red flags. Maybe there was a semester in undergrad. Maybe you took a gap year. Questions that the admissions committee may have. The optional essay is a great opportunity for that.
Fact or fiction, there's nothing you can do to get off the wait list at Simon. Aside from free babysitting for Andrew's kids, which definitely will get you off the wait list. No, I'm just kidding.
That can help. That can certainly help. We're going to say fiction. We do provide some parameters around sort of the conduct when you're on the wait list, right? So take heed to those. That's, I guess, the first piece of advice. And then continue to keep up those relationships. I think that is another important piece. If you've had connections with Sharise, you've had connections with myself, right? Continue to keep those connections strong, and that can help as well in terms of that review process that we go through on a rolling basis.
Awesome. We are concluding that round and going into our final round, which is rapid fire. So I will say a phrase to each of you. I will rotate said phrase. If I give it to Andrew, Sharise, then you can add your own if you would like, because I would actually like to hear them. But you do not have to. But if I lead with you, you must answer, or you will be exited from the podcast immediately. Do you understand the parameters of said rapid fire round?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's get after it.
Start with Sharise.
Okay, there we go. Sharise, you deserve that because you handed Andrew one of the questions earlier. Okay, rapid fire round, Sharise. I'm going to say a phrase and you're going to say hopefully a one word, but I've let people get away with far more than one word over time. So certainly we'll extend that to you. The first rapid fire question or phrase is the perfect applicant. What do you think of when I say the perfect applicant, Sharise?
The ready applicant. You're the perfect applicant when you are ready.
Well done. Ready is her word. Andrew, anything come to mind worth sharing?
I'm going to say a curious applicant. Someone who's curious, both intellectually as well as, curious about your peers and the experience. So curious is my one word.
Okay. Back to Andrew. The feeling of getting accepted into your dream school is, in one word,
Exhilarating. But the coolest thing for me is when I get to make admission calls and see how excited people get and emotional, and that means a lot for us too, right? So I added more words there, but sorry, Sharise.
Relief. I think I think they just, as soon as I imagine are holding their breaths for 9 months or 10 months or whatever, and so it's just, I would say relief.
Okay, so I just thought of something, and I'm definitely punch drunk here. I think that we should move to like having really cool like reveals like they do in high school where they like have different hats and then they like put on the Simon hat and then like, the social media goes off. Like, I think we should do that. I'm bringing that in for this application season. That would be so fun. You all also have awesome swag, so it would be even more fun because we'd have really dope swag as well. Okay, next one, the GMAT. I forget where we are, but whoever's next, the GMAT, what comes to mind?
Investment bankers.
Um, that was really well done in so many ways that if you're not in admissions, you may not understand, but it was just well done, politically correct, and also directionally valuable, well executed. I think we can move on from that one. Admission.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to skip us. So we didn't have anything else,
No.
Eric.
Okay. Admissions myths, Andrew.
One word, admissions myths. Wow. I don't have one word. I'm going to say have conversations with people that are in the know. Eric, school reps, etc. That's my one word.
Well, I like that. Have conversations, right? So it's like don't just allow the myths to settle, right? Like figure it out. Like be inquisitive. You talked about the curious applicant, right? The applicant that wants to find out more. I think that's a really great one. By the way, like you all so far are the only members of the podcast to actually follow the rules up until Andrew violated them. So actually you did really well. So that's good. Sharise, top 20.
Good schools.
And now you continue that trend. Well done. Okay. Good schools. And the last one, you will both be answering this, starting with Andrew. Simon Business School.
Swings above our weight.
Competitive but not cutthroat.
Okay, I you started off so well, and then things just kind of, it's kind of like business school. You start off, you're going to every class, you're focused, whatever. You get your job, and you're like, like I'm really more hanging out, getting to know my classmates.
Okay, I got one for you. Simon Business School, Meliora.
Well done, and that's how we're going to leave this thing. Before we finish, anything that either of you want to say? This was great. It was fun, enjoyable. Really appreciated you both being here. Is there anything you want to add before we sign off?
Well, I will say we're here to help as well and serve as a resource. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I think I thought of another word for admissions myths. I think imposter syndrome can kind of creep in a lot of those myths as well. And so um, maybe you can splice this back into my earlier answer, I guess, Eric. But I think it gives you I think this sort of I don't know, you sort of undervalue what you can bring to a program. And I think having those conversations, reaching out to people, connecting with people that know, you can help demystify some of that imposter syndrome that a lot of students face, especially if they don't come from a business background, right? And the MBA and the value of an MBA can really be there for you. So
great.
I
And
would echo.
Sharise, I'm really curious to kind of also let the audience know how they can get in touch. What's the best way to connect? What's the ideal process for getting in touch with you, with Simon in general, so that they can take that first step towards being accepted at Simon?
But let me first echo Andrew's sentiment that this is a process that can be long and tedious and taxing. Think of it as preparation for business school in that regard. But also just know that if you've committed yourself to applying to business school, you can do it. You belong, and you are just as capable as the person next to you. In terms of reaching out to me to have a conversation, I would love to talk. Email Sharise.Kent, SHARISE.KENT at simon.rochester.edu. In addition to that, if you go to our website, simon.rochester.edu, there's plenty of links to click visit us, as well as what we call CYE, check your eligibility, where you can send us your resume and we will connect. So those are some of the easiest ways. You can follow us on social media as well. But our website, check your eligibility. Email me. You can also email admissions if that's easier to remember, but just hit the rewind button and get my address because I know it's kind of long. But those are the quickest ways to get in contact with us, with me specifically, so that we can have a chat about why you belong at Simon.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sharise and Andrew. For those of you who are saying, oh, they just seem so cool, they actually are. Super laid back, great people. And I think clearly the success that you all have had at Simon as a result, at least starts with you all, right? Bringing in the right people. And I think because you're approachable, because people want to talk to you and they want to get to know the program, I think that's one of the reasons why you've had success. So with that, we'll end it. Until next time, thanks for listening to GradTalk MBA podcast. You can find us on @GradTalk on TikTok and learn more about our MBA admissions, GMAT, and GRE products at Magoosh.com. Thank you to both of you for taking the time today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.